Have you ever had one of those days where you feel like your own brain is just a massively noisy group chat?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it is a profoundly crowded room in there for most of us.
Right. Like you've got your ambition screaming at you to hustle faster, and then your logic is trying to, calculate the risks of a new decision.
Meanwhile, your emotions are completely spiraling over like a single email.
Exactly. And somewhere, buried way in the back, there's this tiny voice of wisdom just asking everyone to please calm down.
Yeah, but unfortunately, the loudest voice usually wins, which isn't always the wisest one.
No, it rarely is. So today, we are actually mapping out that exact internal group chat. Welcome to this deep dive.
Thanks for having me. I'm really looking forward to this one.
Same here. We're looking at a really brilliant contemplative story today. It's called The Map of Conscience, a contemplative story in New York. And right off the bat, I need to clarify to everyone listening that this is not, it's not your typical travelogue about finding the best slice of pizza in Manhattan.
No, far from it. We are diving into a philosophical narrative. So a cast of characters travels to New York, but these characters don't just represent regular people.
Wait, so what are they?
They literally embody different states of human consciousness.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because our mission today is to explore this unique blueprint of the human mind. We're going to analyze how these different fragments of consciousness navigate the sheer overwhelming speed, the noise, and the global power of modern life.
And dropping these archetypes into the ultimate pressure cooker, which is New York City, is just a brilliant framing device.
It really is. It's like an intellectual puzzle that breaks down how you and I actually think and interact in this hyper-connected world.
Well, what sets the baseline for this entire journey is the text's fundamental view of humanity. It doesn't treat human nature as this, flawed system that needs to be disciplined into some rigid ideology.
Right, it's not trying to fix us.
Exactly. Instead, it views the mind as a map where all our internal contradictions
and even our external clashes with other people, I guess.
Yes, exactly. It treats all of that as necessary points of friction. It's a framework where contrasting viewpoints are actually the exact tools you need to build trust and respect.
I love that. So let's meet this internal group chat. We have 5 core personalities in this map of the conscience, and they communicate constantly through this virtual global neighborhood on social media.
Which is such a modern way to frame it.
It is. I actually picture this dynamic kind of like the animated movie Inside Out, but reimagined for a highly intellectual adult trying to navigate a modern digital echo chamber.
That is a perfect way to visualize it. And the defining tension of this group really begins with the clash between tradition and ambition.
So who's representing tradition?
On one side, we have the uncle. He's a 72-year-old retired teacher from Istanbul. He represents measure, tranquility, and really the ultimate conscience of the group.
There is a fantastic description of him in the text that completely changed how I think about aging and wisdom.
Oh, the part about filtering?
Yes. It says he doesn't have an I've seen a lot attitude. Instead, he operates with an I've filtered a lot attitude.
That distinction is just the bedrock of his character. I mean, seeing a lot just means you've accumulated data, right? You've just stood around while life happened to you.
Yeah, you just survived it.
Exactly. But filtering a lot means you've actively acquired wisdom. You've done the really grueling work of separating the signal from the noise.
Keeping what matters and tossing the rest.
Right. And his guiding rule is that life is measured correctly only when it refuses to deceive itself.
Wow. Okay, so sitting directly across from that very cautious wisdom is the nephew. He's 32, he's an entrepreneur from Bursa, and he is the embodiment of search and speed.
He is literally the pulse of the age. If the uncle is the brakes, the nephew is absolutely the accelerator.
Yeah, he operates on this philosophy that conversation is how thought learns to speak.
Because he represents that driving need we all have to interact, to innovate, and, to be understood. He fundamentally believes you can't just sit in a room and filter.
You have to get out there.
Right. You have to put your ideas out into the world and let them actively collide with reality.
Okay, so throwing a completely different element into the mix, we have Roger. He's a 42-year-old from New Jersey, and he represents universal reason, algorithms, and digital ethics.
Roger is the guy living right at the intersection of human morality and digital architecture.
He's the analytical mind, right, like attempting to build ethical frameworks within our modern echo chambers.
Exactly. He is always looking for the universal rules that govern how we interact online.
Then we get the aunt. She is 52, and she represents compassion and realism. She functions as this sort of emotional balance from within life itself.
And she drops this incredibly profound theory in the text about human excellence. She argues that our development progresses through 4 distinct stages.
Yes, her framework is basically a masterclass in understanding personal growth.
It really is. So she argues that we all start with a purely physical attitude toward the world, which is essentially just survival and existence.
Like you're just trying to get through the day.
Right. Then we evolve into a scientific or mental attitude. We start asking how things work. We categorize, we build, we analyze.
Okay, so survival, then analysis. What happens next?
From there, we progress to an artistic, aesthetic, or emotional attitude. We actually start appreciating the beauty and the feeling of the world around us.
That sounds pretty advanced already.
It is, but it's not the end. Finally, the absolute peak of human excellence is the ethical, moral, and ideal attitude.
I want to break that down for a second to make sure I'm fully grasping it. Let's use an analogy.
Sure, go ahead.
It sounds like a progression of how we interact with our environment. Like if you look at a forest, the physical stage is just chopping down wood so you don't freeze.
Right, pure utility.
Then the mental stage is studying the ecosystem,
Right.
understanding photosynthesis and soil types. The aesthetic stage would be like painting a beautiful picture of the trees.
Yes.
But the ethical stage, that peak, is realizing you have a moral responsibility to protect that forest for future generations.
That is an exceptional analogy. It moves from utility to comprehension to appreciation and finally to ultimate responsibility.
Wow.
And she deeply believes that our differences aren't reasons for separation, but they're the necessary ingredients to push us through those specific stages.
That makes a lot of sense. So rounding out our group is the cousin. She's 29, representing philosophy and the system.
She's very passionate about collaborative learning. She believes we are on the verge of a global renaissance.
But she also has a warning for the group, right? That we shouldn't become overwhelmed by the rigidity of knowledge or get lost in the chaotic excesses of emotion.
Right. She's the grand synthesizer. When she talks about a global renaissance through collaborative learning, she is talking about bridging these massive historical and cultural gaps.
Like taking the profound artistic and spiritual insights of the East.
Like the Islamic Renaissance, yes.
Right, and integrating them with the structural scientific leaps of the Western Renaissance.
Exactly. She sees a future where these aren't competing ideologies at all, but complementary pieces of the total human experience.
So you have tradition, ambition, algorithm, compassion, and philosophy, all stuck in one group chat. Which brings up a massive question for me.
What says that?
How do these completely conflicting worldviews manage to communicate without descending into the toxic arguments we usually see on social media? Like, what keeps this internal group chat from just self-destructing?
Well, what's fascinating here is their strict, non-negotiable rule of neighborliness, and it's based entirely on absolute trust.
So they actually listen to each other.
Yes.
Yeah.
There is an explicit rejection of the I know best tone. In this virtual neighborhood, nobody cares about ego. They respect truth and justice, regardless of where it comes from.
So if the algorithm presents a valid point, tradition listens.
Exactly. And if ambition has a blind spot, compassion points it out, and ambition actually accepts it. They prioritize accurate information and universal values over the desperate need to win an argument.
It's a conscious daily choice to prioritize the truth over being right. But, I mean, it's entirely one thing to have this harmonious balance in a digital chat where you can, edit your response, take your time, regulate your emotions.
Oh, for sure.
It is a totally different game when you take this internal map of consciousness and drop it into an external environment that actively attacks that balance.
Right. The transition from the isolated virtual neighborhood to the physical, chaotic reality of the global stage.
Scene 1. Friday morning arrival in New York City. It is the collision of the internal mind with the blistering pace of the external world.
As their plane touches down, New York is already awake.
But there's this beautiful realization in the text that awake is kind of an incomplete word here, because this city never truly sleeps. It only changes its rhythm.
Immediately, we watch these different states of consciousness react to the sensory overload. The uncle looks out the window at the gray-blue morning sky and thinks, the same sun was rising, only at a different pace.
He's desperately searching for a universal constant amidst all the chaos.
Meanwhile, the nephew, our ambition guy, he immediately turns on his phone. He's calculating the time difference, absorbing the sheer flow of the world.
And he hits on this really striking realization. He says, calendars were global, but the soul of days was still local.
That is the defining tension of the modern age. You and I are plugged into the exact same global grid as someone in Tokyo or London. We share the same date on our screens.
Right.
But our actual lived experience, the physical demands of the weather, the local architecture, the specific culture, that completely dictates the soul of our day.
The ant picks up on this physical reality immediately, too. She unfastens her seatbelt and observes that the human body is severely limited by travel, but the heart endures the journey far better.
Which is such a compassionate, grounding observation.
It really is. But I want to look at Roger, our algorithm guy. He's standing in the airport listening to the automated announcements.
Right, and he notes their perfectly measured robotic tone.
But he realizes that beneath that measure, there's this aggressive haste. And he writes down a single haunting sentence: speed often replaces direction.
And the cousin heightens this existential dread right after. She looks out at the massive fleets of airplanes and wonders, does a city grow by how many people are trying to reach somewhere at the same time?
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, because I actually have to push back a little on this immediate skepticism of speed.
Oh, how so?
Well, we have Roger saying speed replaces direction, and the cousin wondering if growth is just people frantically rushing around. But let's be real, isn't the nephew's pulse of the age, that relentless entrepreneurial speed, exactly what built a global powerhouse like New York?
That's a fair perspective.
Right. In a hyper-competitive, hyper-connected world, isn't speed just the bare minimum requirement to survive? Is speed really replacing direction, or is it just a new cost of entry?
Let's pause right there, because you're touching on the exact friction that requires the uncle's wisdom.
Okay, I'm listening.
While they're waiting in this exhausting passport line, the uncle observes the incredibly diverse crowd. He notes that human beings are fundamentally the same everywhere, but they grow tired in different ways.
Yeah.
The nephew, our defender of speed, looks at him and asks, do you think being tired here is different?
And the uncle gives absolutely no response. Silence.
Exactly. Sometimes not answering is a profound form of measure. The uncle's silence is a calculated defense mechanism against the nephew's speed.
What's he defending against exactly?
What is happening here is a critique of hollow exhaustion. Think about running on a treadmill turned up to its maximum setting.
You're moving incredibly fast.
Right. You are sweating, your heart is pounding, you are thoroughly exhausted, but you haven't actually gone anywhere. You have no view of the landscape. You are just matching the speed of the machine.
Ah, I see.
That is what Roger means when he says speed replaces direction. Unexamined speed builds skyscrapers, sure, but true observation, real innovation, and actual direction require stillness.
So the uncle refuses to engage at the frantic pace of the city. He forces the group to pause.
Precisely.
And you can physically feel that pause when they finally step outside the airport into the morning chill. The skyscrapers aren't even fully visible because of the mist. It's as if the massive city had chosen not to reveal itself all at once.
It's a very cinematic moment.
It is. Standing there in the fog, the uncle looks up and realizes truth is the same in every city. But in every city, the human being faces a different test.
This is the core thesis of their journey. The internal map of conscience, the universal truth, does not change. But the environment you place that conscience in completely dictates the nature of the exam.
The test you face in a quiet mountain town is vastly different from the test of your ethics, your patience, and your ambition in the grinding gears of Manhattan.
Exactly. Logically, this overwhelming speed, this treadmill of exhaustion they are feeling, it drives them to seek out a place to ground themselves.
They desperately need a sanctuary from the test, so they get into a taxi, and the sensory overload just intensifies. New York doesn't bother explaining itself, it just aggressively presses upon you.
Right, everything is towering and massive.
Yet there is this lingering feeling they all share that nothing felt complete.
Nothing felt complete. If there was ever a diagnostic label for our modern digital landscape, that is it.
It really hits home.
You have access to endless streams of information, infinite feeds to scroll through, yet you never feel like you've actually finished anything. You never arrive at a state of completion.
Which makes their arrival at a modest, quiet Friday mosque so jarring in the best way possible.
The contrast is huge.
They step off the concrete and onto the carpet, and instantly the sound of their shoes ceases. The environment physically forces a change in rhythm. Here, speed is not deemed improper, but it suddenly becomes unnecessary.
And we immediately see the characters realign. The ant silently greets an elderly woman nearby. No global language, no digital translation needed.
Because a genuine greeting is a fundamentally human act, not a technological one.
Right. And Roger, our digital ethics expert, is fascinated by the architecture of the space. He pays attention to the acoustics and notices that the sound doesn't echo and bounce off the walls, it spreads outwards.
And he thinks words are not spoken to echo, but to settle. I found this to be such a brilliant commentary on the world Roger usually lives in.
It is. If we connect this to the bigger picture, think about the digital echo chambers Roger analyzes for a living.
Exactly. Online, we practically design our words specifically to cause an echo. We tweet or post something provocative because we want it to bounce off our followers and come back to us as validation, as retweets, as likes.
We engineer our communication for the echo.
Right. But in this sanctuary, which is physically engineered to prevent echoes, words are meant to land. They are meant to settle into the mind of the listener and take root.
This physical settling of sound perfectly prepares them for the imam's sermon. The imam doesn't shout to command attention, he speaks calmly, drawing the listeners nearer to him.
And he delivers this really profound formula. He says, a true word emerges from the heart, is weighed by the mind, and tested in life.
Heart, mind, and life. It's an operational formula for truth.
It is.
And look at how intricately that mirrors the ant's 4 stages of human excellence we discussed earlier.
Oh, wait, you're right. Let me think. The physical and scientific stages are the mind weighing the reality of the world.
Yes. The artistic stage is the word emerging from the heart.
And the ethical stage, the absolute peak, is taking that truth and testing it in the friction of real life.
Exactly. The imam warns that you can possess a true word, but if it doesn't actually touch the way you live your life, it remains deeply incomplete.
And if it moves through your life but loses its measure-like, its sense of proportion, it will just exhaust the people around you.
Right. He goes so far as to say that truth doesn't announce its arrival by shouting. It reveals itself as a calm sentence, or sometimes it reveals itself in absolute silence.
Which prompts the Cousin R philosopher, who is usually entirely focused on, collaborative communication and loud global renaissance.
All right, the grand synthesizer.
Yeah, it prompts her to pull out her notebook and write down a single word: silence.
It's the ultimate realization that in a world completely obsessed with global communication and constant talking, the most profound transmission of truth often requires the absolute absence of noise.
But sitting in a quiet, carpeted room, receiving the truth in silence, is the easy part. You're safe in the sanctuary.
Right, the test hasn't started yet.
Exactly. The real challenge, the actual test the uncle was talking about, is what happens when the sermon ends. You have to put your shoes back on, open the doors, and walk right back out into the loud, rushing, demanding machinery of the city.
This brings us to the powerful conclusion of their journey, the concept of the burden of meaning.
When the sermon ends, there's no applause. Nobody is rating the speech out of 5 stars or reviewing it like a performance.
The atmosphere just shifts and everyone simply feels a little heavier.
They step to the door of the mosque. The deafening speed of New York hits them in the face again. And the nephew, our modern, fast-paced guy, looks back and asks, "Will this word remain here?"
The uncle answers him with a very grave warning. He says, if it remains, it becomes not a word, but a burden.
Then Roger steps in and adds, "A burden, if it can be carried, produces meaning."
And finally, the ant softly alters the perspective. Perhaps the word begins to carry us.
So what does this all mean? How are you, the listener, supposed to conceptualize this burden of meaning? Because when you finish listening to this deep dive, you are going back to a flooded inbox, a calendar full of stressful meetings, and the relentless speed of your own life.
It's tough.
How do we actually apply this philosophy?
Well, this raises an important question about the very nature of the information we consume daily. We gorge ourselves on data.
We really do.
The uncle is warning us that knowledge, if left unapplied, if you leave it behind in the mosque or in a book or in a lecture, it mutates into a heavy, useless burden. It just becomes mental clutter.
Think about that highly recommended leadership book you read, highlighted, and then just left sitting on your nightstand. You know the theories, you know the right things to do, but you walk into the office the next day and still lose your temper with your team.
Exactly.
That unapplied knowledge is a burden. It creates cognitive dissonance. It makes you feel guilty because you know better, but you aren't actually doing better.
Precisely. It weighs you down. But Roger points out the mechanism for relief: actively choosing to carry that knowledge, doing the hard, uncomfortable work of applying that truth to your daily interactions actually produces meaning.
It gives your life actual direction.
Right, which perfectly counteracts his earlier fear that speed replaces direction. Carrying the truth is how you reclaim your direction.
And when you fully integrate that truth into your behavior, as the aunt points out, you are no longer forcing it. It becomes your nature.
The truth sustains you. The word begins to carry you.
The narrative ends with this beautiful protective thought. The sentence is too entrusted to be left to the speed of the city. You cannot just let the noise of your environment wash away what you've learned. You have to protect the measure you've found.
You have to actively defend your internal map against the external chaos.
It is such a profound framework. We started with this internal fragmented map of consciousness. Your inner uncle seeking traditional measure, your inner nephew craving entrepreneurial speed, your aunt seeking compassion.
Your Roger calculating logic, and your cousin striving for collaborative philosophy.
Right. We took that noisy internal group chat, walked it through the chaotic, exhausting speed of the global stage in New York, and finally arrived at a quiet realization.
That truth has to emerge from the heart, be weighed rigorously by the mind, and ultimately be tested in the friction of daily life.
Finding the right rhythm between those competing internal voices is really the only way to successfully navigate our modern global neighborhood without losing your mind or your direction. You contain multitudes. And the goal of this map isn't to silence the nephew's ambition or ignore the uncle's caution. It is to let them communicate with trust. But as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final lingering thought to mull over today.
Let's hear it.
Earlier, the uncle looked at the massive, mist-covered skyline of New York and realized, truth is the same in every city, but in every city, the human being faces a different test. Take a look at the physical city or town you live in right now. Look out your window. Based on its specific pace, its architecture, its local culture, and its daily demands. What specific test is your environment forcing your conscience to take today?